Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about herbs, but not just every herb for every day. We're going to be talking about herbs in every season, so for every day. But we're going to be talking about 48 edible and medicinal herbs for the kitchen, garden, and apothecary. And we have the author, Bevin Cohen, here. He's a gardening expert and also the owner of Small House Farm. So go to smallhousefarm.com. The book Herbs in Every Season is out now, and it is gorgeous. All kinds of beautiful photos, and you've got a lot of inspiration there. But man, when you think about 48 herbs, like, you have so many ways to use these herbs, and I love that you did it seasonally. So welcome.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a 48 herbs, and I know there's a lot, but there was some in there that I was a little like shocked that was in there, like ashwagandha. I always thought of that from Ayurveda. In fact, I used to take that a lot. It was actually really good for your body. Isn't that kind of a form of asparagus, ashwagandha?
Well, you're right. It is in the same family. Now, one of the things that we tried to do with the book is include very common herbs that everybody's very familiar with, that likely grows in their yard, whatever it might be.
Dandelions.
Exactly right, that sort of thing. But we also kind of wanted to bring in some of these more outlying plants that folks might not be as familiar with. Ultimately, the message that we're trying to convey throughout Herbs in Every Season is looking at plants through a different perspective, right? Changing your point of view a little bit. And I thought a really nice way to do that would be to maybe dig into some plants that folks are comfortable with or familiar with, and then at the same time bring in some of these other plants to kind of broaden our horizons a little bit and teach us about new things too.
Yeah, no, because isn't that a very medicinal herb? Very healthy for you.
It is. It is an incredibly medicinal herb. Ashwagandha has a number of wonderful uses for sure. But all of the herbs that we talk about in the book are like that. Even some of the most common, well, dandelion, of course, or even your culinary herbs. We talk about things like parsley or oregano or green tea, things that we might be very familiar with in the kitchen also have medicinal benefits. So it
Mm.
was a really interesting balance that we tried to catch here in the book of culinary and medicinal applications for these plants, because I really wanted to showcase that one plant can offer us multitudes of different things. So many different things can come from one
Mm.
plant. Beyond what we may be familiar with, that plant can do other things for us as well, right?
Well, you've got things like echinacea in there, right? Which we are all familiar with. Very good for our body, cleansing, just like dandelions, right? And people don't kill your dandelions in your yard. Stop it. I'm just, I have a thing about it because they're so, they're just so beneficial for the soil, beneficial for us. And people tend to like spray stuff on their lawns when they see dandelions coming up, and I kind of, you know, I'll
Oh, I
behave.
know. I feel the same way about it. And
Yeah.
again, it just comes back to that perspective, that point of view that we have about these plants. The folks that may see dandelion as like a weed or a pest or something that they want to eradicate, they just haven't taken the time to get to know dandelion and all of the
Yeah.
wonderful things that it
That's why
offers them.
you're here. You're here writing books and educating people on your website. I love what you're doing in saving seeds, because even I remember a friend wanting to do herbs and grow herbs specifically for medicine. And she was talking about, and sadly she's passed. We got into this whole research, and she got into this thing saying, we are actually losing our native herbs. Like some of our plants, like echinacea in some parts in the country, have actually lost them as because that actually would grow as a wildflower in some areas, I believe. And she was like, we're losing some of these plants depending on where you are in the country. Is that true? Like growing them in our garden can actually help even pollinators and some of the actual ecosystems.
Oh, absolutely. That's very true. We are losing a lot of these native plants just because of the loss of habitat for these plants, urban sprawl and that sort of thing. As we continue to develop the land, we're losing all of these plants. So it's critical that folks, whether they're, want to have a garden, if they've already got an
Mm.
established garden or however much space you have, you can have a little bit of patch of native plants and really is going to bring in all these pollinators. And what happens is when we bring in these plants, it brings in the insects that enjoy those plants, which then brings in the birds that enjoy those insects. It's really the foundation of the entire ecosystem, right? So having these native plants, even if it's just a small patch of them, is some very, very important work that any one of us can do. So you're right, we did include plants like that in the book as well, because there's plants for everybody, right? Whether you are an experienced gardener or not, there's lots of great plants that you can grow. The coolest thing about growing native plants is that they've adapted to thrive in your environment. So
Mm,
they don't really require any care, right? They've learned how to take care of themselves. Once they've got established in your garden, you don't really have to take care of them. They're just going to do
yeah.
their own thing and you can enjoy all the benefits of them.
I love that, and yeah, once they're established, they're ready to roll and they handle any kind of, changes that could happen if you go through a drought situation. I don't know if you have that in Michigan, but in some areas in the Southwest, we experience drought pretty. Actually, I remember being in Minnesota not too long ago and they were talking about feeling a drought. And I'm going, what? It's green everywhere. They're like, no, we got a drought. So having native plants, they tend to hang in there a little bit better than if not. But one thing also about your book, that all these beautiful photos, and I think you make a really good, you know, um, point of showing this beauty, because I think we forget to grow herbs for their flowers, just for that floral beauty as well. We look at, annuals. Here come the annuals, and a lot of times they're not necessarily the right pollinators and things like that, maybe not giving us any benefits. But if you look at, start with the beauty of the actual plant, like the echinacea flower is gorgeous, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think this is a great point that you're making is that these plants can offer us so many things, you know. The sheer beauty of the plants alone is it's nice to have. It looks nice, it's pleasing to the eye, it brings us joy, right? It's happy. The garden brings us joy just in its sheer beauty. And it's nice for our landscaping, all those sorts of things. And then if you are gardening, I mean, just being outside more and getting that exercise and all that sort of stuff, you know. So you don't even really have to harvest these herbs and use any of the recipes in the book. Just having the plants alone in your garden is incredibly beneficial and healthy for you.
Mm,
You don't even have to pick them, right? You just grow them, have them, enjoy them. Everything in life should be about joy, right? Everything should bring you
yeah.
joy. And the garden can do that simply with those beautiful flowers. You're totally right.
Yeah. And then using them, the using part of them is really cool too, because they're edible, right? So we can look at that. And a lot of times we forget that some of the flowers are edible. There's different parts that you can use. Can't we use dandelions even in a salad, the greens? Am I wrong on that?
Oh, you are absolutely
Yeah.
correct. You know, and so one of the things that come from the seasonal lens is looking at the way that as the plants change throughout the seasons, our needs for the plants change throughout the seasons as well. So dandelion is such a good example of this because in the early spring when we can start harvesting those dandelion greens, right? It's a very bitter herb, and that bitter herb is what we need
Mhm.
to stimulate our digestive system to kind of give us a kickstart after a long
Yeah.
winter. You know what I mean? So right when your body
Yeah.
needs those greens, nature's got them for you.
And it's easy. Your book, you tells you when to plant what. This is the season to be planting this. So it's kind of a nice step by step. And then it's like, here, now you can do this for food. You can do this for medicine, or even like, hey, mosquito bites, that season's coming. And you guys get mosquitoes, don't you, at those Great Lakes?
Oh, we sure do. We get mosquitoes aplenty for sure. And there's plants right here in our ecosystem that are perfect for that sort of thing. Of course, plantain, which is a common weed
Mm,
in most places in the country, is fantastic for helping with the itch of mosquito bites. So again, right as that season starts to kick off, right as mosquito season's coming in, those plants are really starting to thrive and we can start to harvest them. You know, working on the book, this was a multiple year project. So it was really fun for me to spend time observing the cycles of the
mhm.
seasons and the way that the plants grew, and then just seeing the overlap between what I needed from the plants and what the plants were providing it was in step
Mm.
throughout the whole year. It was just absolutely
Wow.
amazing. Yeah, it was really fun way to look at plants from a perspective that maybe I hadn't looked at it so thoroughly before.
Wow. It's cool. And to find so many uses for them too, that I
So
think we
many uses.
forget. Yeah. And so this could save you money, if you're looking at, hey, instead of getting, especially it's kind of like replacing chemicals with something natural. And if we look at herbs, it's like the foundation of medicine. Like if you go back to, the Vedics, back in those days, it's all herbal pretty much.
Oh, absolutely. Modern medicine is just following along that same line. Nowadays, they can synthesize these chemicals or they can isolate these particular parts of the plants. But all of these formulations and stuff, you're right, originated with straight up plant medicine, which is what we talk about a little bit in the book as
Mhm.
well. That through plants we can find our health,
Yeah.
whether, like I mentioned, it's just simply being outside more often or getting the exercise of gardening or
Mhm.
utilizing these plants to craft medicine for ourselves or health and beauty products or just incorporating more
Yeah.
plants in our food. There's a lot of ways that herbs can make us healthier.
Yeah. You take something like rosemary. I remember growing it. And we travel full time across the country, and as we travel, we pet sit, so we get to hang out and take care of people's dogs and cats and donkeys and tortoises who
Cool.
like dandelion greens, by the way. And it's better if they're organically grown in your backyard. I'm just saying for your pets, and it will save you money if you grow them yourself, than going to get organic dandelion greens from a grocery store that has been sitting there on the shelf and been sprayed water upon when they do the thunder and lightning. And by the time you get them, they're half dead, whereas
Sure.
you could just get them fresh from your garden. So we get to see people's gardens and we take care of plants everywhere. And the Southwest, desert Southwest is where we were based out of, and Tucson, we'd have rosemary growing like, people don't think the desert has life to it. Oh, it's insane. Lavender does well because of the drainage, and also rosemary. And we used to use rosemary. Oh, you could cook with it. So many meals take rosemary, but you could use it as a spritzer for your hair. And it has this, I don't know, but it changes your hair for the better. I need some rosemary. I'm just saying, I need to go see if anyone's growing any in the neighborhood we're in right now. I'm going to go steal some.
Yeah, isn't that cool how like the plant could do so many things for us? Like again, rosemary, most folks are probably very familiar with it in the kitchen, but you could take it out of the kitchen and use it again for so many different things. So really, I got to be honest with you, I'm surprised at all of the recipes that ended up in the book. When I was working on this, we did this with Timber Press.
They're
I got.
awesome.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. I got so excited. I tend to get very excited about things and I want to share as much information as possible. And we ended up developing so many recipes for this book. Some of them are tried and true recipes that we've done here at Small House Farm for years. Some are new recipes that we developed specifically for the book. And I wrote and I wrote and I was super inspired. You know how it gets, like it gets a little, snowball down a hill out of control.
A
And
rabbit hole. Yep.
yeah, totally. And Timber was like, these are all fantastic. So they put them all in there. So there
That's
are
awesome.
so many recipes in the book that allows us the opportunity, like you're talking about, to highlight how one plant can offer us multitudes of benefits, right? Far
Yeah.
beyond what we might be familiar with. It can do one herb can do so many things. In my teaching, I often will say it's better to know 12 uses for one plant than one use for 12 plants, right? Because one plant can offer us
Yeah.
so much. So we really tried to showcase that as best as we could in the space that we had.
And so also growing from seed. Let's talk about that a little bit. Is it better to grow from seed or to go get little seedlings from, your local garden shop?
Well, I mean, the answer to that question, there's some variables here. Now, 9 times out of 10, my off the cuff response is going to be like, it's always better to grow from seeds. Always grow from
Mhm.
seeds. That's an important experience to grow a plant from seed to seed. That's an important thing to participate in, right? But some folks have limited space for that. Some folks have limited time or resources,
Mhm.
and starting from seed may not be the most beneficial way to propagate a plant. So
Mhm.
some herbs that we could think of, many of them that are in the mint family. So we could think about things like, well,
Oh
peppermint,
yeah.
spearmint, thyme, oregano, lemon balm, those
Mhm.
types of plants you certainly could grow from seed, and we talk about how to do that. But also, there's other ways to propagate through root division or by stem cuttings or whatever it might be. And it's maybe a little easier if you have limited time or space, or sometimes it's just a little bit more productive. Growing some of these plants, like rosemary, say, from seed, it takes a very long time. It's a very slow
Yeah.
growing little plant. But if you start from a cutting or a root division, you can move this plant into a harvestable stage much quicker. So it's really going to depend on your situation. But we do cover all of that in the book because I want folks to kind of use the book as a starting point. Really, I just want you to understand my perspective and point of view, and I give plenty of examples and how to's and that sort of thing. But I'm just trying to get folks comfortable enough
Mm.
to kind of branch out on their own and try new things. So some plants might be easier to propagate via root division, but don't be afraid to try growing them from seed too.
Right. We lived out in the high desert outside Joshua Tree National Park for a while. And so, people there didn't think, everybody was like, put gravel down and cactus. And that's actually heats your house up a little bit more than you'd realize. And we got rid of the gravel and we had to change our soil and we grew oregano. We got this chocolate mint oregano. We grew it from seed and we had a lot of birds and apparently we had a field of this growing. We we got overrun by this oregano, but we learned we had another, I think regular oregano, mints grew so well in the desert, but we would harvest that and put it in salads. But the teas, this is something, I mean, you can have your own tea shop in your own house by growing herbs, right? That is something that I think people should really understand about the beauty of tea, making teas. And
Oh
that
yeah.
oregano made the best chocolate mint tea. Ooh.
That sounds
Mm.
fantastic. Yeah, I'm a big tea drinker for sure. I when I started learning about plants many years ago, I really started my journey with herbal tea. That was kind of one of my starting points in experiencing plants. So when I teach people about plants, I really like to start with tea. I think it's such a nice place to introduce people to the benefits of plants because it can be medicinal, most certainly,
Hmm.
but it's also can just simply be a delicious beverage, right? So it's a great way to get the plant out of the yard or out of the garden and into the home, right? Because a tea is something that everybody's very familiar with, and we can
Mm.
make some very delicious herbal teas. It doesn't take much plant material, it doesn't take much time to do it, and it's something that helps you slow down
Yeah.
and appreciate the bounty of nature and all these flavors and aromas that these herbs can offer us. So yeah, tea is sort of the gateway, let's say, into a wide world of herbal wonders.
And it can be made from like the roots sometimes and the leaves and even the flowers, right? Depending on the herb of how you make the tea.
Oh, absolutely right. I mean, every part of a plant is useful. Sometimes for different things, different parts of the plant are going to be beneficial for different things. Like we could go back to the
Mhm.
dandelion and we could say,
Oh, yeah.
from the root to the flower, all of that plant is useful, but we're going to harvest it at different times. See, and this is where the seasons come in again. If we're looking to harvest from the roots of a plant, it's best to harvest when the plant itself is dormant, when it's put most of its energy into the root system during, we're going to say late winter to early spring. When the plants are dormant, the roots are going to be more potent. And therefore, that's
Hmm.
when you want to harvest them. And then as the aerial portions, the above ground portions of the plant start to grow, we can start to
Uh-huh.
harvest the leaves. And then, of course, peak flowering is the best time to harvest the flowers. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Every part of a plant is useful, for sure. One of the examples in the book that I really got so excited about was sunflowers.
Oh, yeah.
We grow a lot of sunflowers here, and I really wanted to showcase how every part of the sunflower plant is so useful. Now, we're all familiar with sunflower seeds. Of course, it's delicious and snackable and that sort of thing, but also can be made into a medicinal tea for digestive complaints and that sort of thing. So, sunflower seed tea. But we do a recipe in the book. I called it the super sunflower cornbread, and it's essentially a cornbread
See,
recipe, but
yum.
all of the ingredients are made from the sunflower plant because all parts of the sunflower plant are edible beyond just the seed, right? The petals are edible, the stems, the leaves, all the parts of the plant can be eaten. We even press the sunflower seeds for their oil and then use the
Awesome.
oil in the recipe. Yeah, right? So we're really utilizing every part of that plant to make this bread. And it's just a great way to showcase, like you're saying, how all these different parts of the plant can be useful to us.
Yeah, I remember making with the oregano again, getting the oregano oil, and that's
Oh,
a whole
yeah.
process. But that helped. I remember my mom Nancy had a sinus infection, and I swear that oregano oil, that was like gold to her. Like you hold it over here, and she'd chase you for it. It was like,
That's awesome.
well, it really helped. And there's things like toothpaste, and all those kinds of things that we can use these herbs for, and it will save you money, and where it came from. I think that's the crucial thing about where we are. About we want to know where our food comes from. The best way to know about it is to do it ourselves. Even if it's just one plant. If you do chamomile and you make chamomile tea, well, you're going to know how to like relax yourself. We're all anxious. It's stress relief month, everybody. Let's drink some chamomile tea.
I think every month should be stress release month, for sure. Yeah, you're right. You know, that growing the plant or harvesting the plant from the wild and then creating something with it is the best way to get to know that plant. Of
Mm.
course, that relationship that we can have with these herbs. So I don't think it's even Steven, but I tried to make a division in the book between cultivated plants and wild plants, you
Mm.
know. And I don't know if it's 24 and 24, but it was pretty close to that because I wanted folks to be able to cultivate herbs and have that relationship. But I also wanted them just to realize that these wild plants that are so abundant
Yeah.
around us can do all those same things for us if we just take the time to learn how to identify them, find them, that sort of thing. That they're also beneficial, and that gives us that opportunity to work with nature and develop a relationship with nature, even if we don't have a space to garden. If it's maybe
Mhm.
like in your situation, how you travel all the time, or
Yeah.
people that live in towns where they don't have a garden space, you know, there you can still have plenty of opportunities to develop relationships with plants even without a garden.
Well, I always talk to people about this. It's like you go to the grocery store and you want to get some fresh basil or fresh oregano, fresh rosemary, thyme, basic, fresh, right? And they come in this piece of plastic, which
Yeah.
isn't healthy. It's like, I don't know what it's like. You might as well buy eggs when you're trying to buy these, like a little sprig just for one dish, sometimes could be more expensive than the rest of the food. And so it makes sense to me to grow it. I look at the economics of it because the country could use some help right now, I think. And part of it is looking at that, especially for families to get kids involved. If they're growing something and they're watching something like a sunflower grow from seed, they're going to be invested in it. They're going to be excited about the harvest part, or maybe they'll be like, I don't want to cut down my sunflower, but they'll learn about nature that way.
Oh, sure. You know, we have two kids here, and obviously they're getting older and older. They're what are they? They're 11 and 16 now. But they've lived most of their life here at Small House Farm, especially the young one. I mean, he
Mm.
was a baby when we bought the farm here, and so they have been experiencing these opportunities to interact with nature for most of their lives, and you can see the difference in their willingness to try new foods or anything like. Of course, when they were young, it was if we grew it, they would eat it. If it came from the grocery store, they may not be as brave to try it. But if they grew it, they
Oh,
wanted to see
wow.
what it tasted like. You know, that was fun for them. But now, after all of these years of experiencing nature, now they're so open-minded. I can take them almost anywhere, and they'll try new foods everywhere that we go because that's part of the fun. But they always want to ask a little bit about, well, how's this
Mm.
grown? You know, like where did
Yeah.
this come from? You know, that curiosity I think is so important to instill in our children because well, the children are the future, of course. And if we can get kids more interested in eating a healthier diet or living a more active lifestyle or conserving the resources of nature, I mean, that's how we're going to get the world back on track here, I think,
Mm.
is through the children. So, yeah, inspiring children with plants is, I mean,
Mm.
that's some of the most valuable work that any of us can do, most certainly. And the way that we're going to do that is by example, leading by example. So if we can
Mm.
get more adults turned on to spending time in nature and observing nature, then the kids are going to
Yeah.
follow because kids just do what they see, right?
Yeah, they get excited and they get excited about bugs. And that's I remember going to a Asbury Woods up in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's a woods, it's a forest that was planted by the paper people, Hammersmith or Hammermill, whatever the paper was. They realized, oh, we cut down all these trees. We better put them back. And so they created this forest. And they have all these, and they have a herb garden and things like that, roof gardens, everything for kids. Now I was talking about, oh, well, this is great. It takes them away from phones and everything. And she goes, no, it's how we teach them to use phones. And now she got me strapped into like iNaturalist and Seek. You can go in and see what you become part of citizen science. And herbs, like you're saying, out in the wild, they're there. We go and, plants, that's part of what we do is we go to parks, public lands, and some of them have actual like demonstration gardens of what you can grow in an area. If you go to in a national park where they have a lighthouse, they often have a lighthouse garden, and half of that garden from the lighthouse keepers are herbs. You will always find chamomile, calendula. You will always find these herbs, not just here, we're growing some cabbage. it has a herb next to it because the herbs help the cabbage, so it's kind of interesting for kids to go out in these kind of areas and see that, and also forage, right? Because out in nature we can harvest, right? Can you give some people some ideas of some of the wild herbs that we have in this country?
Oh my gosh, there are so many, right? One of the ones that comes to mind immediately for me is Monarda fistulosa. It's often call it the wild bee balm, and it is a
Mm,
gorgeous, a beautiful plant. The flowers remind me almost of like fireworks. They look like little purple explosions.
yeah.
Very attractive. So it's a very nice landscape plant. Butterflies love it. It's going to bring a lot of butterflies around. We've actually, for years and years, gone down by the river to harvest it and bring it up. It's medicinal. It's delicious. It kind of tastes like oregano. It has a flavor
Yeah.
profile that reminds me a lot of oregano. But we actually just brought a patch of it up and planted it near the home just so it's just more convenient for me. But the amount of butterflies that it brings into the garden has been incredible. We could talk about, of course, we've mentioned dandelion. We've got plantain. There's chickweed. These are all plants that
Yes.
grow abundantly almost everywhere in the country that you
Hmm.
go. You can find variations of these. I was just in Spain for a work
Cool.
trip, and while I was there, we were finding a variation of plantain that grows there. You know what I mean? These plants are almost everywhere, right? They're pretty much ubiquitous with nature and wild places.
Hmm.
We've got horsetail. We've got in a little bit into the book, we dig into some trees, which of course is not an
Hmm.
herb by any means. Some of the plants that we talk about in the book are not botanically defined as
You've
herbs.
got fungus in there.
Oh, right, yeah, which isn't even a plant,
We've
right?
got come. Yeah, I know. It's like for vegans, I don't know. You might want to relook at it. I'm just saying.
Right. Yeah, so it's like we tried to talk about all these different things, So we talk about linden trees and we can talk about pine trees and like I mean
Yeah.
nature everywhere we go is offering us something wonderful. We can visit some places where we might be able to find wild arnica growing, which is a wonderful herb for pain relief, muscle
Yes.
pain.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so like there's just wherever you are at, you can find some wild plants that will check all the boxes for you, all of your needs. So again, ultimately the message of the book, I think, is to get people to go outside and learn about the plants that are growing around them, right? Go
Yeah.
wherever you are at, go. So you're blessed, Lisa, because you travel all over the place. So you're doing this
Yeah.
on a much larger scale. So you're seeing different plants in different places. But wherever you are at, you can go outside and enjoy some nature and observe a multitude of plants that are doing so many different things for us if we just take the time to look at them. Whatever season it is, whatever your location is, Mother Nature is ready for you. You just have to get out there and do it.
Yeah. It's interesting because, in the public lands, and then like there's in the deserts, you'll find like Mormon's tea that the Mormons did use to brew tea, and so did the Native American people use this plant. Now you might not see it in another side of the country, or sometimes it's got different names. Right now we're in Appalachian, and we've got the Pisgah National Forest, and you've got like you want mushrooms, man. I'm telling you, I trip out, like not in that way, but like I trip out going out because I'm just like, look at this. One day it's this little thing, and next thing you know, it's got spores on its head. It looks like a little punk, and then it moves on. And it's like you just get so fascinated. I remember going on a hike and tasting licorice. Like I knew about the can, and I love the can. I love licorice, but
Oh,
I
sure.
never had had it. Like a friend was, and I think was it horehound? Is it related, or am I getting it twirled around? I think I am.
Well, it's a little twirled around, but both of those plants have been utilized to make candies. So I can see the
Okay.
connection you're making there for sure.
Yeah, it's good. Like I
It's
was,
so good.
you can taste these things as you, and sage, isn't that another thing that is wild is sage,
That's
that's
true.
a
And
main
you'll
thing.
find different sage in different places. So, when you go, my sister-in-law lives in San Diego, and San Diego
Oh,
County
okay.
is where white sage is a native
Yeah, that's
plant.
why we still live out there. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's again, like you said, wherever you are at, there's something great growing. So taking advantage of that, just going out there. I love walking in through nature, hiking trails, whatever it might be. And every place that I go, that's what I want to do. When I'm visiting a new place, we're gonna hike around and look at the plants, which is fun. But what I even love more than that is hiking in the same place over and over again, because
Mm-hmm.
then you can see the cycles of the plants and how they
Mm-hmm.
change throughout the year. Like you're talking about with those mushrooms and how you can see first they're coming out and then they're opening and the spores are coming out and you can see the stages of their life. And Well, that's fun. That's really cool to be able to observe that. But then we could take that knowledge back to our gardens if we garden, as we watch a plant through its life cycle and see how it grows and how it produces seed or spores or whatever it might be, and the soil and conditions that it prefers to grow in, we can then replicate that back in our gardens and create a little ecosystem
Mhm.
that those plants are going to thrive in.
Yeah, and we don't have to chop everything down either. I learned out in the desert to let greenery be greenery. Everybody would like, you've got a blade of grass, take it out. I'm like, dude, no. The actual cactus needed as a mulch. We started to really learn to just let nature do its thing, and sometimes just don't over baby it. You know what I mean? Like you were talking about doing a lot of the natives. Sometimes I think we box things in. Just let it be sometimes,
We're
which is
often
a
trying
lesson.
to, yeah, we force nature to, we attempt to force nature to bend to our will. And what that creates is struggle. And that's not necessary because nature will thrive on its own just fine without our interaction. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So I think that's an important lesson to learn. We tend to want to put ourselves at the top of the food chain all the time. We're the top and
mhm,
everything else is below us. And that's not reality. And if we think about
yeah,
that, we all know that's not reality, right? Nature comes first every single time. And sometimes if we can just learn to get out of the way and let nature take its course, then we can see, I mean, it's going to thrive. That's what nature does. That's how it's designed. And it's when we impose our will on nature that we create challenges that don't need to be there. So by observing how nature grows plants and then replicating that process, that's the easiest way to garden, right? Is just letting
yeah.
nature be our guide.
And then we learn to be part of it
We
and
are a part of
coexist.
it.
Yeah,
We co-
exactly. But like you're saying, we dissociate,
we do. Even the phrase coexist, actually, if we think about it, coexist to me means two things that are existing together. But
Yeah,
actually, we are one thing. We are the same
that's
thing.
right.
We are nature, right?
No, you're absolutely right. 100%. I love this. I love your book. Before you go, I wanted to ask to just touch on the importance of seed saving, because I know you do a lot of that. And I know that we need it for especially our native and wild plants. And then I also feel on a bigger scale, like we've lost heritage plants, we've lost heritage turkeys even because we've kind of gone, and that's the beauty of how your book is. There's 48 herbs you're introducing us to. Some we know, some we don't know. But we tend to think herbs, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Boom, that's it. Right. And that's kind of what we have done to our food in the world, which I don't think on a grand scale is good for the soil. It's not good for ecosystems. I mean, if you think about that, we only have one turkey, really. And you think about, how many types of chickens are there? Look at what's going on with the bird flu thing. It, we have gotten rid of our diversity. And that's something that scares me as an individual going, we need diversity more than ever. When you say we are one, I feel like when we're not embracing diversity, we're actually cutting off our foot, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's like almost an understatement. Nature loves diversity. We are one, right? But look at people. We'll just use people as an example.
Oh, yeah.
How many different types of people are there? There are so many, so
Yeah.
much diversity that needs to be embraced. And it's the same thing with our wild plants and animals. Is diversity is essential to the survival of Mother Nature. Diversity is king, right? And we can be a part of that preservation of diversity through saving seeds, right? Whether we are saving seeds from the wild, where we're bringing native plant seeds in and helping those native plants thrive
Mhm.
in these new environments when they're losing their natural environments, whatever it might be, or preserving heritage varieties, old varieties of fruits and vegetables that have been around for countless generations, thousands of years sometimes, preserved by indigenous
Wow.
people. These varieties have been
Yeah.
around, so saving those through seed saving. And seed saving is a simple thing. For those of us that may not know much about seed saving or they're new gardeners, it can seem like a foreign concept, a little bit different. And oh, how do I get involved in this? And we teach a lot of seed saving workshops here at Small House Farm. And I always
Cool.
like to start by pointing out people have been saving seeds since the dawn of agriculture. We're talking 10,000 years or more. People have been saving seeds, every single person saving seeds. So it is something that every single person can do. It is actually a very simple thing. Once we learn how to identify the proper time to harvest the seeds, the couple of techniques that we might need to clean them, whatever it might be, it's a very simple thing. And it's critical that we preserve this diversity and not just hoard it and save it and put it in a freezer somewhere, but disperse it and share it. That's the best way to preserve these
Yeah.
varieties. If you think about like the grocery store, you use some turkeys and that sort of thing as an example. One example I always like to use is eggplant. If you go to the grocery
Oh
store,
yeah.
there's one eggplant. There's one type of
Yep.
eggplant in every single grocery store, and it is the most boring and lame eggplant
A
you'll
big
ever
fat
get.
round one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all right, but there are hundreds, possibly thousands of other varieties of eggplants, all of which I think are superior to the grocery store eggplant. But people aren't familiar with them because we don't see them out in these places. If you're lucky enough to shop at a farmer's market, sometimes you will find some of these because the farmers are growing these different varieties to catch your eye, and that's really, really nice. But you can also grow them in your home gardens. These beautiful and different vegetables that have all these different colors and different flavor profiles and different
Yeah.
textures. And it can really open up your eyes, open up your whole world to all these different possibilities, all these different perspectives, different ways to look at the wild world can be found right at our dinner table. If we take the time to preserve these varieties, we do that by saving those seeds.
I think that is so crucial. And for kids, when they get those like heirloom, vegetables like those beets that are red and white, little stripies in them and stuff. I mean, come on. And they say to eat colors are the best thing for us, right? So that's a huge part of it. I
Oh,
just think
yeah.
I think diversity is a garden. That's where you can look at one, square foot patch and sometimes see, a whole bunch of things. You're going to see a whole bunch of different bugs in there versus the one kind of bug that everybody wants to go get a pesticide for, you know. No, I
Yeah.
think this is
Year,
crucial to
years
do.
ago, I used to work at a nature center. We did education for children, and one of the programs that we would do is we'd take them out to the meadow, and we would say, "Okay, kids,
Mm,
what do you see growing out here?" And they'd usually say like,
mm.
"Oh, grass or flowers or whatever." They'd say one or two things that they would see, and then we would have a big square that we would take out and lay on the
Oh, no
grass,
way.
and then have them get down to identify plants. And they would sometimes find dozens of different plants and things growing in this 2 foot square, whatever it might be. And it would always just blow their mind because from a distance, all they would see is grass. But
Mm,
when you get down and take the time to observe, you would see a whole wondrous world of plants right before you.
yeah.
And that's, I can kind of like this book is maybe my way of getting other people to put a square down in the yard and see all of the different plants that are
Because
actually
you
out
could
there.
just do a square. You can even indoors, and there's community gardens that you could be growing in. Last thing, going back on the seeds being so important. And I feel like, when you, not like us traipsing around, but to save the seeds that are native to that work in your soils, your microclimate, right? Um, we and many years ago, I'm going to say like 10, maybe even 15 years ago, we did an interview out of Nebraska, and it was Kearney, Nebraska. There's a museum nature center thing there. And they were working with the indigenous people that were from there that got relocated during that horrible time in our country over to Oklahoma. And they saved their maize. Their maize would not grow in Oklahoma. So their bodies are off now. If they're not, it's not working. Then the nature center opened up their land. They brought these seeds that they've been saving for generations, and it grew. Multicolored maize grew there without any help. It just, this is my home. And it's like, so I feel like with the saving of seeds and what you're doing is like people will start to learn what is part of our backyard that we can preserve, just like what the indigenous people did, knowing that seed needed to go home. Isn't that wild? And
It
that
is
they
wild.
saved it. They saved it, you know?
Well, indigenous populations are very familiar with all of the things that we're talking about. And to them, this is just second nature, right? That's
Yeah.
just the way that life is. And so for us, we're kind of like relearning indigenous
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, right? We're trying to pick up what was forgotten by our own people at some point. And we can find that in the seed, I think. The seed is like, it's such a magical place because it's like at the cusp between life and death, right? When the plant dies, it gives
Oh
the
yeah.
seed that is new life. And so it's a really cool place to be. And we can learn so much about ourselves and so much about plants and the world around us through these seeds, by saving these seeds. And again, it's something that anybody can do, and it doesn't take a lot of space, right? Seeds are
Yeah.
exponential. You plant a handful of beans, you're going to end up with hundreds of beans at the end, a
And you
handful
don't
of
have to
corn,
buy for it.
and you don't
Yeah.
have to buy them. Right, right. And
Yeah.
you just have so much abundance that nature will provide for us through just a simple handful of seeds. So saving seeds is something that all of us can do, whether it's fruits or vegetables, whether it's herbs and flowers, it doesn't matter. We can all do it, and we all should do it.
Mm.
Even if it's just one plant, pick a plant that maybe it's already growing or that you like to eat or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Pick that plant and say, oh, this year I'm going to try to save these seeds and see what it's all about. And it's going to change your whole outlook on the world. I'm going to tell you, it is a slippery slope from saving seeds to being a total plant nerd. It's a very quick journey. I'm going to tell you what.
Geeking out is good. Geeking
Yeah,
out is good for us all. It's good for the soul, really.
for sure.
It's about understanding the wonders of life. George Harrison left his garden for a reason. He really
That's right.
did. Well, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Everyone, again, smallhousefarm.com is a website to go to. Once you get on that site, again, that's going to be a happy rabbit hole, but go get the book. It's Herbs in Every Season, 48 Edible and Medicinal Herbs for the Kitchen, Garden, and Apothecary, which I can never really pronounce, but I tried. Again, everyone, it's by Bevin Cohen, and he does workshops, speaking engagements. He's busy, and I suppose you balance it all with some herbs in between. So
Maybe a little chamomile tea, right?
yeah, really, yeah, bring the tea on. I need it. I got allergies out here, so it's pollen season, so I need my oregano. All
There you go.
right. Thanks so much, Bevin.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.